Man, when I found out that there was going to be another movie based on the Dungeons and Dragons franchise, I did not expect the best, but boy, was I surprised to discover that Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves is a hell of a good time. This is a movie that Hasbro and Paramount Pictures and all of the other stakeholders, the business stakeholders, have been putting a lot of hope into because, of course, we've seen things like the Transformers movies just explode in popularity out there. And also, Dungeons and Dragons has this core massive fan base that have loved the fantasy role-playing games forever. So there was also this, I think, anticipation that it was going to disappoint a lot of the diehards out there. And I can't really speak to that because, truthfully, I have dabbled with some Dungeons and Dragons, but I'm not a diehard. I don't really play tabletop RPGs. My daughter, though, is starting to get into Dungeons and Dragons, so I took her to see the screening, and we're going to hear her thoughts in a bit. I'm also starting to understand that because my daughter Ruby is becoming such a fan of D&D, it's likely going to rub off on me, and we're going to start playing it some more together. And I think that was what this movie was about. It's definitely a comedic introduction into the lore, and if you're familiar with some of the monsters and some of the creatures and some of the archetypes that you will see in a Dungeons and Dragons game, you're going to see them reflected in some of the characters and some of the scenarios. And I think it will successfully ignite some curiosity in people to go and try D&D in its true form. And not to mention all of the D&D inspired other products out there, including video games. But as a movie, this was a ridiculously good time. There is a great comedic streak all the way through this thing, and Chris Pine, I think the major headliner of this movie, is really a terrific talent. We saw him just kill it in the Wonder Woman movies. He's just so charming, but also incredibly funny. He's got great comedic chops, and he looks like he's just having a great time. He's part of this band of thieves in this movie, which also features Michelle Rodriguez, who is always dependable. I've always been a fan of Michelle Rodriguez. She's great in this. She's more of the straight person to Chris Pine sort of being a bit of a goofball and a rogue that can figure things out on the fly. He is the de facto leader of this hapless group of thieves who invest a lot of trust in him to figure things out, and he doesn't always. But it's fun to watch these different people work together. Justice Smith is this up-and-coming magic wielder, and Sophia Lillis is Doric, who is the shapeshifter with some really incredible abilities. And then along the way, they meet up with Regé-Jean Page, who is this fearless warrior who has unbelievable strength, and he is a bit of a standout in this movie as well. He's got some Drax-like qualities about him. And they also come up against a former ally in Hugh Grant, who is definitely having the time of his life in this movie. He has got some great scenes, and he plays them perfectly. He's such a cantankerous, conniving jerk in this movie, and he's so fun to watch. He is reveling in it, and he's having such a good time with it. And of course, there are some other magic-infused creatures and characters that inject all kinds of visual effects fun into this experience, and also up the stakes and up the challenge for our heroes. And there are a lot of setbacks and a lot of comical situations and a lot of interesting situations that are definitely an homage to Dungeons and Dragons tales. And I was just really charmed by the way that all of this stuff came together. I was laughing, I was concerned for the characters, and I was enjoying the hell out of Hugh Grant's cheekiness. And I just came away from this movie massively entertained. And I was definitely reminded of the success of the Lego movies as well as some of the Transformers movies. I can't say that all of the Transformers movies sucked. I actually like Bumblebee quite a bit. In the same way that those movies, when they work, are really honoring the source material and poking fun at the commercialism and the silliness of the whole enterprise. I think there's a quality to that as well. There's a definite tongue-in-cheek, in-on-the-joke quality of Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves. But more than all of that, though, it's just hella fun. It's just a really, really good time. The audience that we saw it with was laughing and getting into it. I think everybody left the theater in a good mood and buzzing about what they had just witnessed. It feels also fresh. I think a lot of what works in Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves is a lot of stuff that the Willow show, TV series from Disney Plus aspired to get to, but didn't quite, or in some cases, and for some people, they weren't anywhere close. But I think Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves is definitely one of those movies that's going to appeal to a great deal of people, and I think it will please a lot of the fans, a lot of the people that have been along for this long journey with Dungeons & Dragons over the years and have wanted a good film to sink their teeth into. I am anxious to hear what you guys think, though, especially you D&D lifers out there. Let me know what you think of Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves when you see it. But I think you should see it. But I also wanted to give my daughter the chance to chime in a little bit. I asked her a little bit about her thoughts about Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves.
I thought it was very good. As a D&D player and fan, I found it quite enjoyable.
What was your favorite thing about the movie?
The owl girl.
Why did you like the owl girl so much?
Well, she really looked like the character from Stranger Things, Max. She was the youngest and a very key element in the movie.
Did you think it was funny?
I think it was funny, but sometimes I didn't quite always understand the jokes. I think that maybe it's meant for kids maybe a little bit older than me or adults.
What did you think about the visual effects in the film?
The visual effects were quite amazing. Like, it felt like I was in a round of D&D. It was really cool.
Are you starting to think about some things that you can create for your friends to enjoy in a game?
I'm not sure about the landscapes and stuff like that, but I think I'll probably have those characters in one of my campaigns.
What did you think about Chris Pine, the main actor in the movie?
I thought that he was trying too hard.
What did you think about Hugh Grant, the bad guy in the movie?
I thought that he was also trying too hard. I liked the idea, though, having, like, a principal bad guy. His objective was not take over the planet, destroy all. It was just get money, 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 money.
And what about Michelle Rodriguez?
That was definitely one of my favorite characters. She was quite funny. I love her obsession with potatoes.
What about Regé-Jean Page, that warrior guy that they met?
He seemed like trying to make somebody the definition of perfect. Like, they were just like, okay, let's turn perfect into a person.
What would you say to people that don't like D&D? Do you think that they would still enjoy this movie?
Yes, and I think you could watch it, and if you didn't hear the name of the movie, I don't think you would connect it with D&D unless you played D&D and you knew, like, the beast names or, like, the type of characters that they are, maybe the places.
Were you surprised by how much you enjoyed the movie?
I was actually quite surprised. I was mostly in it for the popcorn, but it turned out into a really good movie.
What would you give Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves?
I would give Dungeons & Dragons an 8 out of 10.
Thank you so much, Ruby. I'm going to give Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves a 9 out of 10. Go see this one.